Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Claudia. We're HelioHub. We're a Discord community for undergrads and new grads interested in heliophysics, and we're funded by the NASA Coffees Drive Science Center. I'm Claudia. I'm joined by my lovely team, Dan and Phoebe, and some grad students from Coffees, who are here to share advice and answer all your questions about attending your first scientific conference. I'm going to pass it off to Phoebe to introduce herself and share an announcement about an AGU meetup. But first, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A function or raise your hand. We'll try to get to your questions. Yeah, and I'm going to pass it off to Phoebe.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm also one of the AGU or the HelioHub program coordinators. So for AGU specifically, we are going to put on a very fun event in coordination with Coffees. We're going to have an undergrad meetup there on Tuesday at 11 a.m. I'll send out more information with like flyers that we're going to make showing the exact location, but it'll be Tuesday after the solar physics oral presentation, so everybody will kind of be in the same place already. But it's just an opportunity for undergraduates who are part of HelioHub to meet up finally in person and get to chat together. And it'll be at the same time as Coffee with Coffees. So there will be a lot of professionals there meeting to talk about different solar topics. So if you have anybody you want to maybe meet there, any professors or researchers, that'll be a great opportunity for that. So passing it back on to Claudia.
I'll pass it to Dan
Okay.
to introduce.
Oh, I'm Dan. I'm the undergraduate engagement manager for Coffees, and we're offering yet another in our Helio Hub's Solar Circuit webinar series, and we're so glad everybody's here. And let's take it away.
Okay. I'll have the lovely grad students introduce themselves now. Whoever you
You
guys
want to
can
call on
decide who
somebody?
starts. No, you guys, they can decide.
Hi, I'm Catherine Bloom. I'm a sixth year graduate student at University of Colorado Boulder. And I've been to three AGUs, and I'm happy to pass on wisdom that I've learned.
Hi everyone, my name is Juana Vessa and I'm a coffees postdoc at Stanford University.
Hi guys, my name is JT Stefan. I am also a postdoc at NJIT though, and I'm about 2 years post PhD. This will be my third or fourth AGU.
Okay, great. We're going to start with preparing for the conference. Oh my gosh, my screen is going crazy. What are some must-have items to bring or prepare before the trip? How do you organize your conference schedule? Um, oh my gosh, sorry, my screen is going crazy. And figure out which sessions you want to prioritize. Any coffees, beans, feel free to take a stab, or just generally preparing for the conference.
So in terms of like trying to decide, so AGU is particularly overwhelming. AAS is similar. These really, really big meetings are really overwhelming when it comes to figuring out like what to go to because AGU in particular is such a large meeting. Something that they do though is that there are certain days that tend to be stacked with sessions and specific topics. So like Coffees always does sponsors a set of sessions at AGU and they're typically all on one day. And you'll find out what that day is whenever the schedule is released. There's typically like a solar physics day. Um, the work that I do interfaces a lot with the planetary science community. So there's often a different day where a lot of those planetary sessions that are interesting to me tend to fall. And there's also like nonlinear geophysics is another category where there's people that I know who will be presenting in there. And so things tend to fall on single days. And having like a couple of target categories that you look at can be very, very helpful. And so for me, basically with AGU, there's like typically 3 days that are relevant to me. And then on that day, I can pick and choose like when to go to the poster hall or which session oral sessions to attend. And I find that that's been a method that has worked because otherwise it's just too much.
Yeah, I guess I might add on to what Catherine is saying. For sure, make a calendar yeah, a calendar or a schedule for yourself for the talks that you would like to go to. And similarly to what she was saying, you will find that you'll have some gaps in your schedule. And I really recommend, once you have gone through the main topics that you're interested in, and then maybe the subtopics that are slightly outside your field, go to, if there are any, plenary talks from somebody outside of your field. And I really learned a lot doing that in terms of how to present my research, especially, learning from a topic that you're not totally familiar with. You get a good idea of, what makes a good speaker, what makes a good presentation.
And just echoing off of what Catherine and JT said, definitely look at the schedule beforehand and even at the start of the day just to remind yourself what's going to happen. But also don't try to plan out like your entire day all at once. I mean, AGUs, it's easy to get presentation fatigue, especially after hearing so many wonderful talks. So don't feel as if you have to attend every single talk or every single session or even stay like the entire day.
Hey, can I add something as well?
Of course, Dan.
Yeah, I find it, especially when the conferences are so huge, to come with at least two or three objectives. And like, what do I want to get out of this conference? And if you're feeling lost at any moment, kind of refer back to those objectives and okay, am I achieving those? Like maybe one objective is to meet with some potential grad school advisors, etc. And then okay, I got to start doing that. Or I really want to meet a sunspot expert and attend sessions that are going to talk about the latest research on sunspots. Okay, this is what I need to focus on. And just how those objectives help kind of drive you through that 5 days or whatever it is so you don't end up just feeling overwhelmed.
I would also say
And
if it's
oh,
AGU,
sorry.
don't do 5 days. Like pick 3 days, or don't be afraid to do a half day because otherwise you will burn out. Sorry, JT, go.
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. Obviously it's a great experience to be there and to talk to so many interesting people, but you also have to take care of yourself at the same time. And as Dan is mentioning, it can be pretty exhausting because not only are you absorbing all this information, you're also worrying about networking and socializing and all this other stuff. And so, yeah, definitely make sure that you keep time for yourself. And so, you know, I'm going to take Catherine's advice because normally I only give myself an afternoon off. But I think, the 2 days rule is definitely worthwhile.
Thank you so much for all of the wonderful advice. Are we ready to move on to the next one?
I guess we didn't really address the first point, but a water bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And comfortable shoes.
Yes.
I would also, so I'm kind of at fault for doing this too, but you don't necessarily need to have your backpack on. It kind of weighs you down, and then your back is gonna hurt at the end of the day. So maybe think about leaving your laptop in your hotel room. You could come back and get it later if you need it. Um, but it might just make the conference a bit more comfortable if you don't have it with you.
Great advice. Thank you so much. I think we'll move on to if you're presenting, what's your advice for writing an abstract that gets accepted? Any tips for designing an effective eye poster and making it stand out? And how do you decide what to include or leave out when someone stops by your poster, when you're presenting your poster? Yeah.
Well, I've never had an abstract rejected, so I don't know if I can really comment on the first one other than your advisor should help you with this and it should be fine. Um, I've never done an eye poster, but in terms of the final point, I always ask whoever's coming by what their experience is with the topic because AGU is so huge that genuinely that's a reasonable question to ask. You don't have to assume, you can just say, "Hey, where are you coming from? What's your background?" Because a lot of people of all backgrounds of, there could be a geologist wandering around who stops by your poster just because they're interested. And so there's no shame in asking, and then based off of that, you can point at different things. Your poster is basically a visual aid for you to point at. And I found that having different levels of things to point at is helpful. So there's a couple basic cartoons I always have because they're useful to explain basic concepts about the sun to people. And then I'll usually have a couple of like more intense figures for the smaller community that it's relevant. So having like different levels available on your poster and just asking like, what is your background? How much do you know? Is the easiest way to do it.
Going off of what Catherine said, whenever I do posters, I tend to think of them kind of like flash talks. So I just make sure to really point out the very important things. And then sometimes, like Catherine said, knowing your audience, I might have like two different versions. So one that might be a bit more in depth with the science for like another solar physicist, and one that might be for another scientist that's in a different field that maybe knows a little bit, but not as much. Um, and yeah, just try to gauge your audience with that. And it's okay to leave things out because if people are curious, they'll just ask you more questions.
That's a great point, Lana. Yeah, I guess I can talk mainly about the second bullet point, how to make an effective iPoster presentation. Um, the nice thing about the iPoster is it's multimedia. It's stuck with figures or images or, the whatever type of data that you're trying to show. And so I guess my advice there would be, if you can, to take advantage of the nature of that kind of presentation, because you can then include some sort of like time-dependent animation or some dynamic figure. And I find that really helps in drawing people who were maybe on the fence of coming to your poster, really kind of draw them in because they see something.
Looks like he dropped out there.
But
Oh,
I guess echoing what JT
yeah.
said while he's gone, definitely like for eye posters, you can do animations and those are very eye-catching for people, even if they don't really understand them. People love animations. And also I guess with the eye poster, so I've only done an eye poster for AAS, but one of my issues is that in comparison to an actual poster where you're limited in terms of what information you could put on there, with an eye poster, it kind of seems endless. So try to treat it as if you were developing an actual poster. You don't need to write a novel for each section, if that makes sense.
Speaking of old
Would
school
also like to
posters.
add, oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, I
To
was
include some of your like personal information on there, like maybe a QR code for people to scan if you end up not being by your poster, which at AGU, I think like the poster sessions are only 2 hours, so maybe you'd be there the whole time. But if you need to step away, somebody could scan that and contact you through like LinkedIn or your email. So that's something important that I would say to include on there.
It's
yeah.
also common at AGU to have a QR code for the paper that you're referencing. And also something that I've done and that I've seen a lot of people do is they'll often put a little picture of themselves on their poster so that someone like could feasibly track you down if you're nearby your poster and they're interested. That's more physical poster than iPoster, but it is helpful.
Yeah, can I just add that I've seen posters where, hey, if you want to meet me, and if you're presumably not there, sign up here, put your name and email, and I'll be in touch. Or even I'll be back at 3 o'clock, little clocks and things. Just ways that people definitely who may be interested in what you're doing, yet can't seem to reach you, have a way to find you.
All right. Such great advice. I love the having a picture of you on your poster. That's so fun. Now we'll talk about navigating the conference. How do you balance attending talks, presenting, and networking? How do you plan your schedule for such a large conference? And how do you make the most of a conference? Pass it off to the beans.
This is such a tough question because it's a constant balancing act. Um, I think that when it comes to networking, I've done very little networking at specific AGU networking events, and it mostly happens over lunches and dinners via connections that are made, like through my advisor, through my research group, things like that. Um, I know that some people do go to like the AGU networking events. I haven't had experience with that, so I don't know how useful that is. Um, but usually for me, the networking is happening over a meal. And so that feels like a thing that you have to do anyway. You should be eating at these conferences, making sure you're having lunch, having dinner, having breakfast. Um, and I think usually for me, when it comes to like talks, and poster sessions, which is a really big thing at EGU, usually it's like a morning talk session and then an afternoon poster session, and that's how I've tended to balance it. And also for EGU, you always block out time to go to the exhibit hall, which is very fun. Um, typically earlier in the week, give yourself a couple of hours, find a friend, wander around, and that's a nice fun thing to do that is a little bit less stressful. And occasionally there's a dinosaur you can ride, which is what happened last year. And like there's like emotional support dogs and puppies and stickers and cool things.
Kind of echoing what Dan said way near the beginning of this webinar. So I'm not necessarily a very extroverted person, and so I remember when I started out going to conferences, it was very, very overwhelming. But something that helped me a lot was actually developing a couple goals each day. So, like for instance, I would want to go to these sessions, so I would make that a priority, or I would make it a priority to also go to the exhibition hall and talk and interact with the people there. Um, so just keep in mind how much you can actually do each day. And like I mentioned earlier, it's okay if you don't attend every little thing.
I see Nick has a hand up.
Hi, I'm Nick Gross. I'm at Boston University, so it's evening here and I'm home getting ready to watch some Monday night or Thursday night football. Um, on Wednesday night of AGU, there will be an outreach event at an art museum that's nearby. Unfortunately, I don't have any more information than that right now. But take a look for that. So the outreach event, it's a science outreach event. So there's a bunch of missions. I think the Punch mission will be there. And then it may be that IMAP is also there. Um, and a bunch of other science missions. So this is organized by the educator group at AGU, the education section. Um, and so I'll be there with I'm at as part of Shield, which is another drive center looking at different parts of the heliosphere. And yeah, so that's a place to like socialize, and it's at an art museum, so that's kind of nice, and you can see some fun science stuff. And B, if you know anybody who is presenting, they may be looking for people to man their table for a half an hour, or staff their table for a half an hour. Excuse me. Let's see. And there was a post details on HelioHub when you have them. Yes, I'll make sure to get those from Michelle Nichols, and we can pass those along. Thank you.
I think there's probably one more thing I want to say on this slide, now that I was thinking about it, which is I don't know if this will come up later, but something that I found extremely helpful in navigating the conference is have a group chat with 5 other people. And whenever you want a buddy to do something, whether that's to go to the exhibit hall, to go to the poster hall, to go to a session, or to like, you have a free lunch, you have a free dinner, you can go text to the group chat, hey, does anyone want to do this? And someone will probably say yes. It needs to be big enough that you'll have a response rate. That was something I did last AGU, and it was just extremely helpful in taking the pressure off, feeling like, yeah, as Nick said, have a posse. Take the pressure off of feeling like I'm not utilizing every moment well. It's just like having a buddy you can do things with, because that's also part of the AGU experience. No one in the group chat that I had last year was from my institution, so I was still seeing people that I wouldn't otherwise see. But even if it's people that are from your institution, it's good to do this with a friend. And I found that made it much, much easier.
Also, I wanted to add on
And
to that.
semi.
That
Oh,
is,
sorry.
oh, sorry, JT. Something I wanted to add on to what Catherine said, because I do that too, and that's a really good idea. But I remember starting out, I didn't have any friends and I didn't really know anyone. So going to conferences was always really daunting. But actually, it's it's pretty easy to find friends at conferences, and then you can quickly get like a conference buddy. So don't be afraid to go up to other undergrads or even like grad students as well and interact with them.
Yeah, that was definitely a more relevant tip than what I was going to give. I was going to piggyback off of Catherine's comment about the exhibitor hall. That is something that you might overlook, as not being necessarily relevant to, what you're going there to learn science and what have you. But I highly recommend going to check out the exhibitor hall. There are a bunch of really neat things going on there. There are some sort of like demonstration companies or something like that. And just go for the eye candy essentially. Definitely take an hour or two throughout the week to go and check it out.
Going back to preparing what to bring, don't bring because you're gonna get so much stuff from the exhibition halls, like bags and bags. Like I even checked in one of the tote bags that they gave me from AAS as an extra like carry-on bag. So yeah, plan for some space.
All right. On a similar note, we'll talk about networking and professional development next. How do you approach people at posters or after talks? How do you start conversations with scientists or PIs you admire? And any advice for following up with people you meet?
So I guess so in terms of approaching people at so I find approaching people at posters to be a lot easier. Just by even just walking up and down the poster hall, eventually there'll be an opening. You can join in as someone is discussing their poster, and then you can start asking questions. Approaching people after talks, I found can be really difficult since usually there might be several people that want to interact with the speaker. So what I'll do is I'll make a note if I really want to speak with the speaker and try to track them down at, say, the poster hall or in the exhibition room. And then in terms of starting conversations with scientists or PIs you admire, honestly, the best advice I've ever gotten was even if you're awkward, just go up to someone and just start talking with them. Like it's totally fine. Everyone's a little awkward sometimes. So it's really just the first hurdle of starting a conversation that can be the most difficult.
I will say on the topic of posters, it is extremely common in the AGU poster hall where you will encounter an undergrad or a graduate student who just really, really wants to talk to you about their research, and it's really, really easy to learn something new. Everyone is generally pretty friendly, and it's really straightforward, as Juana said, to just wander up and join a conversation that way. Um, And like Juana said, it's oftentimes really hard to catch people after they give a talk. If you already know you want to talk with them, you might be able to catch them before their talk, but then the downside of that is that you haven't then heard what they are going to say. So sometimes, I mean, you can, if there's someone you really want to meet with, you can cold email them beforehand and say, hey, I am going to be at AGU. I'm really interested in your work because of XYZ, or I know this other person that you know, and you can arrange a time to meet that way.
Likewise, you can do that after their talk. Usually a lot of people have their email addresses at the end of a talk. And so you could just follow up in an email and just be like, "Hey, I listened to your talk at AGU and I found it really interesting. I wasn't able to interact with you that day, but I have several questions. Can we meet up for coffee or something in the next couple days?"
I'd say in terms of following up with people that you meet, you have to follow up so fast. Like follow up like that day or the next day, to make sure that is still fresh because otherwise it's really, really easy to forget to do it, um, and just to for it to fall off your radar.
Should
I
I
use
move
the
on?
notes.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say I use a notes app in my phone if like just as a reminder to myself to follow up with people and how I can reach them and not just their names but where they're from as well because sometimes some people have similar names and so that can be confusing.
I'll also say that all of this is much, much easier at meetings that are smaller than AGU. I was mentioning before this started, that like AGU is like a 30,000 person meeting, and so it has to be handled with care. But I also go to like 80-person workshops where everybody is doing the same set of things all of the time, and these conversations are just much easier to have if you're seeing the same set of people every day for a week. So a lot of this is very much like large meeting advice, and for smaller meetings, this is less of an issue.
all right. Um, Now about funding and logistics. How do you find funding to attend? What should undergrads know about travel awards and grants, and any advice for budget travel and lodging?
I guess I can talk to the third point, advice for budget travel and lodging. First things first, I'm sure your advisors tell you this, but definitely come with a roommate. Um, that obviously helps share the cost a little bit. Um, in terms of other things that you can do, I'm a bit neurotic when it comes to housing. And I check the website pretty frequently over the summer until like they post it, because typically there will be like a few days before they announce it that the housing has actually been posted to the website. So you can secure like those really cheap deals that they get when they reserve blocks of rooms. And likewise, try and book your flight as early as possible as well. Obviously the later that you book, the more expensive it gets. But I also know you might not have that luxury if you're not 100% sure if you're going to AGU.
On the topic of housing for AGU specifically, this is not a problem for other meetings. So the way AGU does it is they reserve housing blocks at a bunch of hotels where they charge like the government rate, which is, to be clear, not that cheap, but it is cheaper maybe than otherwise. And AGU announces when this housing goes live. And because there are so many, like thousands and thousands of people trying to get this housing, it fills up extremely quickly. So it absolutely is worth it to book as early as possible. I made the mistake of not doing that one year, ended up in a place that was not great and really far away. So, like for AGU specifically, booking your housing early, and a lot of the time, like booking the housing early is really, really important. And a lot of the time, you can reserve your housing without registering for the conference at the same time because sometimes there's a paperwork delay where if you are being funded on a grant, you have to get approvals. But you can reserve the housing without any of that. As a pro tip. Um, Yes. And in terms of if you really want to budget lodging for something like this, you can get an Airbnb with a bunch of people. And that is, I think, the cheapest way to do it. It's not something that I've ever done, but I have friends who have had success doing it that way.
With the Airbnb, I agree that is absolutely the cheapest way to go about it. Check what your university's policy is first, because recently my university changed from allowing it to not allowing it, which really stunk, especially, when I was looking for funding and stuff, because it was very difficult then to try and find a hotel and stuff like that. So check first, but yes, Airbnb is definitely the most attractive option.
Um, I wanted to quickly address the first point about finding funding to attend. So I remember when I was an undergraduate student, my department would give students some money if they were to attend different conferences, but no one really knew about it unless they asked the head of the department. So sometimes just asking uh, can really pay off because your department might have some funds for you to attend.
Dan, do you want to share?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something JT mentioned. If somebody is funding you, whether on a grant or some other institutional funding, especially with universities, they can often have really restrictive reimbursement policies if you're planning to get reimbursed. So for instance, here at Berkeley, you can spend up to $65, $75 a day in meals, and they don't care about receipts, and you think, great, I'll just go ahead and claim that money. Well, they actually want to know how much did you spend on breakfast? How much did you spend on lunch? How much did you spend on? You have to break it down, so you might as well collect those receipts. So just be aware of all the really idiosyncrasies about these different policies for getting reimbursed for your travel.
Yeah, there's also a weird thing where if your hotel includes breakfast, then you don't get the reimbursement for like the breakfast cost. So it is often helpful to find a hotel that has a breakfast that you will actually eat. And if it's a hotel that has a breakfast you will not actually eat, then think about that when it comes to like reimbursement, which is a weird thing that I discovered in doing this. And just to add to like the travel awards and grants, at least at the graduate student level, I've gotten help from both my department, which was really, really wonderful about not having really restrictive reimbursement policies, and I could just ask nicely, and they would say, "Here's $1,000." That was very nice. And I've also gotten funding through the graduate school, like the graduate school institution, which had much more restrictive, had an application process, had a long, long drawn out, arduous reimbursement process. Um, so just be warned, I did manage to get a travel card from my institution, and I don't think that's standard, but that was extremely helpful. So if that's a thing that's available to you, definitely recommend because it means you're not fronting the cost of hotels, which is quite extensive.
We do have a question in the Q&A if we want to go ahead and answer that one. So someone asked, do you or should you attend a conference if you don't have any research related to that conference? Or are funds given in priority of who has research to present and who doesn't?
I
I don't know if you guys are also able to view this question if you click on the Q&A chat.
I do not see the Q&A chat.
Yeah, I
If you
can't
click
see
on
it.
more along the bottom, it's like an
Ah,
extra app.
there
Yeah,
we
it's kind of
go.
hidden in there.
I see, I
Sorry, guys.
see. Excellent. If I think that funding awards tend to go with research. I think it's harder to get funding for a conference that you are not presenting research at. And if you want to attend a conference where you're not, that is unrelated to your research, I guess I wonder, like, you have to have a very clear idea of what you want to get out of that conference. Um, yeah, I think, and I'm not quite sure what that would look like. I don't know if you have a very specific example, um, but sometimes there is a case where you do want to go to a conference for a specific reason, and then, but I don't think people don't tend to randomly go to a conference that for which they're not presenting research or their research is wholly unrelated.
I can kind of share on this one. I did it a little bit for AAS. So it's not like solar focused, but I couldn't attend AGU and I wanted to go to a conference. So I asked the UT Austin astronomy department and I was like, can I please have some funding? It is a physics conference, astronomy. And so they did have money just for anybody who wanted to go to the conference. They allotted like $1,000 maximum for everything, all travel and stuff. So it wasn't depending on like if the research was actually relevant. So that was really nice. And I did present there. There was a small kind of solar or like sun related topic that was like the very first session. So there were poster sessions that other people were relevant there. Um, but for the most part, it was more like planetary based. And I did like, I fit in where I could. I tried to find like where I could fit in. So it makes it a little fun, even if it's not directly along the path of your research. So it's doable and it's still a good time.
That's good to hear. I guess I'm surprised to hear you say that AAS was outside because I went to AAS for solar as an undergrad. And I like presented like summer internship work at AAS, which is the only time I've ever been. Um,
Yeah,
but you make
everybody
a
I
good
talked
point.
to,
Yeah.
they were like, why did you come to this one? And I was like, well, I couldn't go to AGU. And I was like, it's
Yeah.
still astronomy.
It's still
So,
useful.
Also, I
right.
think AGU has one of those 1 day passes
Oh,
as well. So if there's something you're really interested in, that might be an avenue to explore. And kind of like what Phoebe said, as an undergrad, I went to my first conference was one where I was somewhat doing work in that area, but I wasn't presenting anything. My advisor just wanted me to have some conference experience, and I ended up learning a lot. So it was a lot of fun.
and then we had another question in the chat that relates to that. Um, Deacon said, would it apply if you don't have research or your current research is something that you don't want to do long term? You can still attend the conference and not have to present anything. So that's totally fair. Yeah, and perfect opportunity to explore something else, a different topic besides your current research.
Also, something I want to add, because I didn't realize this going into my career, but you're not necessarily tied down to any research topic. I explored everything from like lunar research to stellar research in my undergrad, during my undergrad time, and then during grad school, I settled on solar, and I really like that. But even in grad school, I've had friends that have changed research fields from like solar to planetary. So you're never really um yeah, if you don't like your current research, you can easily change to something. And conferences are actually a good way of doing that, connecting with people that in fields in which you might want to work.
Right. I think we'll move on to our final slide about personal stories and reflections. Any tips for navigating a big conference? We have some there that we already put, but I'm sure you guys have others or want to add or agree with those. Lessons learned from things that went wrong, missed talks, tech issues, etc.
If you're not like I said at the beginning, if you're not presenting, think about not bringing your laptop with you, not bringing a backpack with you. It's just it's a lot. It's a lot on your shoulders. And I always go in these conferences thinking, oh, I might do some work here, but I never do that because I'm always talking with other people. So,
Um, for AGU, uh, the check-in on the first day takes a long time. So if you want to attend a session that starts at 8:30 in the morning, like the coffees sessions have often started on Monday, you basically need to make sure you have like picked up your badge the night before, or you have to go super early. Um, which is again like very much a giant conference thing that doesn't matter so much at the smaller meetings. And beyond that, I feel like I've already mentioned the tips that I have. Um, have a group. Don't be afraid to take time off. Um, give yourself time to figure out the layout of the conference center. I have not been to AGU in New Orleans, but I hear the conference center is like a mile long. So, like literally it's just one big long line, and that the transit time to get places will be longer than you think it is. If there's a talk you really want to make sure you get to, give yourself extra time to get there. I'll see if I think of anything else.
also well, at least the one in San Francisco, they had a poster printing thing on site. And so like I remember I had my poster printed there and that was actually really nice. But just make sure you look at the deadlines for that, so that it's in time for your session. But in case you don't want to carry a poster and travel with a poster, then that might be another option as well to look into.
Yeah, posters are really, I love the poster sessions at AGU, and I have never actually given a talk at AGU. I've only ever had a poster. It's a very poster heavy conference, and the conference hall, at least the like poster hall, at least historically, they've changed this now, was arranged so that the geodynamo people, it worked from the center of the earth out. So the geodynamo people are at one end of this like airplane hangar sized hall, and then Pluto is at the other end. In terms of traveling with a poster, uh, if someone in your group is driving to the conference, they can take posters. So I drove to AGU a few years ago, and I just took everyone in my group's posters with it, which meant no one had to get on a plane. We've stacked posters in the same tube, so only one person has to bring a poster tube on the plane. If you are on a flight, a direct flight from, well, if you're in the Boulder area and there's a huge number of people from Boulder that go to AGU, if you're on the flight that is from Denver to wherever AGU is that year, there will be a lot of posters. And there have been times where they've literally just had to like commandeer an overhead bin for everyone's poster tubes. Um, so you can get them on the plane. I've also asked nicely, and the flight attendant will sometimes put it in like a little closet. So you can travel with a poster tube. There's things you can do. It's often helpful if you combine forces with other people that you know that are going.
Or get one of those the canvas posters that you can fold up too. Those are also really helpful.
Do those like wrinkle easily? Like do you see the wrinkles when you hang them? I've never used one, but I'm
Well,
intrigued.
a little bit, but they don't, so they just wrinkle at like the intersection where you fold it, but it's not too bad.
Nice.
Um, and then I guess I also wanted to reiterate again, like it's okay not to attend everything. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to step out as well. It's also okay to just go sit down and not talk to anyone either if you want to just like regroup a little bit or just go out and explore the city too. Make sure you do take some time to explore the city if you feel comfortable with that, as well. Oh, and also don't fret over small things. Like if you're giving a poster and you realize you said something incorrectly, it's okay. If someone wants to follow up, they'll like ask you a question regarding that or to ask for clarification. But it's okay.
And do you have more to share?
Yeah, I just remembered that if one of your goals is to network and meet people, your institution, your university, organization, or whatever might have a table or informational booth there at that particular conference. And they're often looking for volunteers to staff those tables. And if you do that, people are going to be wanting to talk to you for that hour or that 2 hour, whatever you sign up for. And so it's just a good way to, again, meet people, find out why they're there, and then you can introduce yourself and they can learn a little bit more about you, like you're associated with that research group or what have you. So that's another great way to easily meet people and also, do something fun and whatnot.
In terms of if you're presenting either a poster or a talk, a piece of advice that I got that I found really helpful was like have a notebook with you and at the end of your session or at the end of your talk, write down every question you were asked. Um, so because it's good to know what people had questions about so you can prepare in the future. And also some of those questions might be good research-worthy questions that you should be thinking about anyway. Something my advisor always talked about was like, what questions did you get asked when you presented? And is there something we can change about the way you presented this material, or is there something we should look into more? And that's a very helpful research thing to do.
I'm gonna stop sharing because that's it for our presentation, but can open the floor up to questions. I know we had some late joiners, but feel free to ask any questions about attending your first conference or specifically AGU, to our lovely coffees, beans, and people in HelioHub.
Yeah, and you can either raise your hand or put the question in the Q&A or even in the chat. We do have a question in the Q&A right now. Do you want to read it, Phoebe?
Yes. Okay. So from Izzy, she said, "Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm a first year student who was just curious into learning more about conferences because I don't really have any experience or knowledge about what they are. This helped uh, demystify what they are. I'm curious, how do you choose between talks happening at the same time where you want to attend both?"
Oh, that one's a difficult question. So, unfortunately, that will happen, and it's okay. It's just the nature. There's only so much time in a day, um, in which the session organizers or conference organizers could set up the talks. But usually, I try to think about if it's someone that I don't interact with on a daily basis, because if I interact with them on a more regular basis, then I kind of know what they're gonna say. So I try to go to someone's talk who like I don't normally interact with, because then I think I'll learn a lot more.
You can also divide and conquer. So you could say, "Hey, I'm gonna go to this friend that you have also go to this talk, and then we can compare notes after," is also an option. But yeah, this is always difficult, particularly at something like AGU that is so big. At smaller meetings, sometimes there will only ever be one talk at a time, so you will not have this problem. Or there's like two talks at a time, and one of them is obviously more relevant. Um, so but I agree with Juana. If it's someone that you don't normally see, it's versus someone that you do interact with often, you should probably go to the talk of the person that you don't normally have access to. But it's a hard question.
Sometimes what you can do as well is you can contact the other person and just be like, hey, I wasn't able to attend your talk, but I'm really interested in that subject. I'd love to meet up with you. If you're going to do that through email, or even just if you know what they look like, just hunting them down around the conference. That's also another option.
I will say it's something like AGU. Even at my first AGU, because I was there with my advisor and other people at my institution, you do run into people that you know. If you head towards the poster hall, towards where your session is, you will often run into the relevant person. It happens more often than I think it will, given the size of AGU. But even though it's so big, because you're going to a certain area of the poster hall or a certain area of the conference center where the talks are happening and they're clustered, and so you're more likely to run into the person that you want to meet. And then that obviously increases as you go year after year. So last year was my third AGU. I couldn't walk like 10 feet without seeing someone that I knew, and I don't know that many people. Um, so it is more likely to happen than you think that you will just run into somebody that you need to talk to.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Catherine or Juana, any really memorable moments from past conferences and or maybe career changing moments?
So I guess I can speak to this. I feel like what helped me land my postdoc here at Stanford was going up to my supervisor. That was the first time I had seen him in a while, and I knew of him and I knew what type of research he did. And it was at a time where I was looking for positions. I was about to graduate, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go up to some people that I know are around this area and I know are kind of doing similar things, and I'm just gonna interact with them and then ask them for jobs. And so that it worked out. So sometimes just talking to people does changes your life, to be honest.
Making it obvious that you're on the job market, a thing that I am on presently. I will say at AGU, I have co-chaired a poster session. I basically got asked a couple of years ago to be involved with proposing to have a session because oftentimes they want an early career person, which can be a graduate student or a postdoc, involved about inertial waves, which is what I study. And so the past few years, we've had a poster session, which is extremely convenient because it's everyone that I want to talk to coming to my poster session. I can get them all in one place. And I co-chaired it last year, and that was such a fun poster session to be a part of because everyone I wanted to talk to was right there. And so that was really rewarding.
Also, I also wanted to ask, so not just like making it obvious if you're on the job market, but like if you're going to grad school, being like, hey, I want to apply here or I'm going to apply here and I'd really love to work with you. Building those connections early on can also help you in your career.
NAGU has they have the grad student fair, right?
I think so, but sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like those are too broad. Like I feel like if you have a field you're interested in and you've looked at different grad programs and you've kind of established who you might want to work with, and if that person is attending AGU, I feel like that direct line can be a lot
That's a good point.
better.
That's good
I
advice.
think the grad fairs, it's if you have like broad questions about applying to the grad program, those are really useful.
Uh, Kind of a follow-up question. Should you bring copies of your resume? Or is that
I never
over
have.
the top?
Yeah, I feel like that's outdated. Um, I mean, so not AGU specific, but I've been at conferences before where I've asked, again, looking for jobs, and I was like, hey, I'm looking for postdocs, and then someone will ask me then to send them my resume or CV through email. So I guess I wouldn't bring resumes with you.
That's kind of
Yeah,
what happened for
I
me.
agree.
Oh, sorry.
Go right ahead.
Um, I was putting it down my email for like different companies and stuff that were hiring and looking for people. And I talked to one lady and she just asked me like, "Oh, send me an email. Here's my business card. Send me your resume through there." So I don't think, yeah, you don't probably need to.
When I was in undergrad, I did not go straight into graduate school. I just found a normal job because I didn't know that I wasn't having a nice time in undergrad, so I didn't want to commit to going to graduate school. And I went to the like career fair, the STEM career fair that my university held. And I went every year because it was good to talk to people. And then my final year, I went with the intent of like getting a job, getting an interview. And I got two interviews from that. But I don't think I ever had even in that situation, which was much more corporate, I don't think I even ever handed out a resume. I think it was very much like email us your resume or fill out the form that is equivalent to your resume online. Um, was the standard, at least in 2018 when I was doing that. So, and I think in academia in general, there's less of a hand me your resume vibe. I think astrophysics might get you the closest to it, actually. I think they're the field that's like most likely to have that. Um, and it's not much of a thing.
We have a lot of job fairs here at Berkeley, and the minute you walk up to a booth, is, oh, well, where's your resume? That it's expected there. So this is definitely different.
It is always nice talking with them, like if you're interviewing for scientific positions, because you're talking to a scientist and scientists are nerds. And I've always had like a nice, pleasant conversation. There are people that are want to talk about their research and they're curious. Um, and it's a little bit less, in my experience, less soulless than uh, applying for non-academic jobs where you're dealing with like an HR person at some level. I
Feel
see the
free
comment
to
about
un
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to flag. I see the comment about the personal website, which, yes, there's a lot of that. And in academia, it can be really, really basic HTML. It doesn't have to be fancy.
I was just gonna say, feel free to unmute if you have a question or put it in the Q&A or raise your hand, anything. Yeah.
Someone wants to help me build my website. I am in need of assistance because it's like not working.
Just do it on like Wix or something. Like get a free
That's
Wix. I
true.
don't
I
know.
was trying to make a fancy one.
Ask Kamal.
It's from GitHub. Okay, Deacon, I'm gonna reach out to you. Watch out.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot actually, that students don't share websites anymore. They share GitHub pages. It's all about what you can do.
There was some like website through GitHub, like you could make the website, and that's what I was trying to follow, and it's not working, but we'll see.
All right, well, we're coming up on the hour. Of course, everyone here is on HelioHub, so you can always ask follow-up questions there. But yeah, Claudia, do you have any final words for us or anybody?
Maybe we could do the announcement about the meetup at AGU because we had some people join a little bit later, I
Oh
think,
yeah, yeah.
after
Phoebe, you want
announcement.
to redo that?
Yeah. Okay. So if you guys are going to AGU, day one is the Monday morning. There is all of the solar posters. Day two, there's the oral presentation. We're having some people from Coffees talk about or give a solar presentation. And then following right after that at 11 a.m. So the presentation's done at 10. You get an hour to walk over there. But at 11 a.m., we're having the undergrad meetup with HelioHub. So if you're there attending, you can come find me, and then we can all get to meet up in person, and it'll be held in conjunction with the Coffee with Coffees, which is where a lot of the professionals from Coffees will come and get to discuss different topics in heliophysics. So if there's anybody there that maybe you want to talk to, this would be the perfect opportunity for that as well. And there will probably be refreshments of coffee. So
And we'll post this all in the Discord too. So no worries if it went in one ear and out the other. But yeah.
I see Ainsley's with us. You went to the meetup last year. Do you want to just say a few words about that experience?
Yeah, so I originally, so that last year was my first AGU. I'm now a grad student. Well, and so I went to the meet last year and we didn't know where it was because it was like in the hotel room. It was in like one of the hotel lobbies. It wasn't even in the conference hall. But I ended up talking to a bunch of other undergrads, and that was like the first time throughout AGU that I met other undergrads because everyone else was, oh yeah, I'm a postdoc or I'm a grad student, all this. And like I finally found people my age. So it was super nice getting to have that connection. And then that's how I was able to meet and connect with all of the other coffee people as well. So it was very good.
Yeah, and so many people within Coffees are just so generous with their time. I mean, you can see here, perfect example of all that happening. But you will definitely be welcome. Just introduce yourself and say, you heard about this through HelioHub or however you heard about it. We would love to have you there. All right, so Phoebe, again, that time is,
11 a.m. on Tuesday.
and do we know the location yet?
It's in a lecture room. I don't remember the actual one, but it'll be a pretty big space.
Okay. Stay tuned for a flyer.
Mhm.
Right. And before that, the coffee sessions from 8 to 10?
Yes.
Okay.
8 to 10, both Monday and Tuesday.
Okay. That's actual presentations, one session, various presenters, right?
Right. So day one on Monday is the posters, and then day two is the presentation.
Okay. Catherine, Juana, are either of you part of that Tuesday morning session?
I'm not going to AGU this year. I
Oh,
feel like
okay.
such a fraud after all of this discussion, but I'm going to a really specialized workshop
Okay.
that is exactly the week of AGU, and everyone who I would normally see at AGU in the session I've been co-chairing, we're all going to this other thing. So not this year, hopefully in the future.
Got it. Got it.
Yes, I am not going this year.
No.
Well, it is a bad time for students to, especially undergrads, it's right in the middle of finals usually and such. So, all right, Claudia, you want to close this out?
I don't know what to say, but thank you all for coming. And thank you to Juana and Catherine and JT who left for sharing your advice. You all have such great advice. And to Phoebe and Dan and Ainsley, you all, thank you. But yeah, um, we'll be back next month for another HelioHub webinar that we'll be announcing soon. And have a good evening, everyone.